All right, today we're going to do something a little different. We're taking a look at a research program that treats an ancient sacred object, the high priest's breastplate from the Bible, not as a religious symbol, but as a piece of technology. We're going to unpack it like a formal lab report and ask a pretty wild question. Could it contain a hidden blueprint for modern physics?
So here's the central idea, the question that kicks this whole thing off. Let's set aside mythology for a second. What if the 12 gemstones on the breastplate weren't just picked because they were pretty? What if their specific materials and their exact placement followed a strict, hidden set of rules? A kind of logic that we could, actually uncover with modern science.
So, here's our roadmap. First, we'll look at the object itself and the method used to analyze it. Then, we dive into some frankly startling results. After that, we'll unpack a kind of cryptographic key that seems to unlock a hidden architecture. And finally, and this is super important, we'll get real about what this research can claim and, just as importantly, what it can't.
Okay, so the object of our investigation is the breastplate of judgment. It's described with incredible detail in the book of Exodus. And for millennia, it's been seen as this powerful, symbolic relic. But this research program flips that view completely. It says, let's treat these 12 gemstones as real-world materials arranged in a very specific order, and see if there's an ordered, materials-based logic hidden in plain sight.
So how on earth do you even begin to test an idea like this without just seeing whatever you want to see? Well, the whole method is built on one thing: discipline, not fantasy. The goal was never to find clever one-off connections. The goal was to see if a rigorous, repeatable process could reveal a structure that actually gets sharper and more defined the more pressure you put on it.
The analysis is pretty cool. It breaks down each of the 12 gemstones into 3 distinct chemical layers. First up, you have the host chemistry. That's the basic mineral, the stone's skeleton. Second, the impurity chemistry. These are the trace elements that give a stone its unique color. And third, you have the anomaly layer. Now this is where it gets really interesting. These are rare, heavy elements that, chemically speaking, just don't belong. The theory here is that they're not mistakes. They are intentional markers, acting like specific instructions in a computer program. Now, for the single most important rule of this entire investigation, compression. The best way to think about it is like a jigsaw puzzle. A piece only fits if it makes the whole picture clear and locks other pieces into place, right? Same idea here. Any connection or line of inquiry that created more possibilities or made the system looser was immediately thrown out. This rule is the guardrail that stops the whole project from just becoming a bunch of clever, made-up connections.
Okay, so with those strict rules in place, the program ran a whole series of analytical tests. And the truly fascinating part is that when they applied all this pressure to the chemical data, the results didn't scatter in a million different directions. No, they began to collapse, to converge onto the very same, very specific result over and over again.
Let's just quickly walk through this because it shows how rigorous this was. Run 1 was totally blind. The computer had no idea what it was looking for, and boom, it converged on one specific material. Run 2 had different theories compete, and they all lost to that same result. Run 3 added in the gold setting of the breastplate, and the result didn't budge. Run 4 was all about trying to break the theory, but it only ended up confirming how critical certain stones were. By the time they hit Run 5, it was obvious this wasn't random. A coherent architecture was starting to emerge.
So what was this single, stubborn result that kept popping up? It's a material called uranium berylide, or UB13. Now, this is not just some random compound. This is a famous cutting-edge material in physics. It's what's known as a heavy Fermion unconventional superconductor. And in plain English, that means it's a substance that does things modern physics still can't fully explain even after 40 years of intense study. For this specific, famously weird material to emerge from an ancient religious artifact is, well, to put it mildly, it's a shock.
So, just as our heads are spinning trying to process that chemical result, the program pivots to a completely different angle. It asks, what if the key isn't just in the chemistry, but in the biblical story itself? It regroups the 12 stones based on the family lineage of the tribes, who was born to which of Jacob's 4 wives. And when it does this, a whole new layer of structure just snaps into focus. And just look at the division of labor this reveals. It's incredible. The principal wives, Leah and Rachel, they provide the basic structural chemistry, kind of the background canvas. But the handmaids, Bilhah and Zilpah, they carry the active payload. Bilhah stones bring the uranium and thorium, that's the key anomaly element. And Zilpah stones bring the beryllium, which acts as the receiver. It's a stunning detail. The most critical, operative chemistry is assigned to the socially subordinate figures in the story.
This reveals this amazing split. It's like a tale of two physics. The chemistry from the wife Leah generates what we call a conventional superconductor, a material based on physics we totally get. It's textbook stuff. But the chemistry from the handmaids, it exclusively generates the family of unconventional superconductors, like UB13, the materials that are still on the absolute frontier of our knowledge. It's as if the breastplate itself is making a distinction between established science and the mysterious, unsolved problems that keep physicists up at night.
Just let that sink in for a second. Of all the possible chemical combinations you could make, only the pairing of the two handmaids produces this single, coherent, and scientifically massive family of materials, and nothing else. It is an incredibly clean and specific output. So now we have two totally independent lines of analysis, the chemical compression and this family tree cryptography, and they're both pointing to the exact same, very strange place.
This brings us to the architecture. See, the Book of Exodus actually describes two different ways the tribe names were ordered. On the priest's shoulder stones, it was a simple birth order, like a static list. But on the breastplate itself, the order is all shuffled around based on the mothers. The program argues this isn't a contradiction, it's an engine. The shuffle from one order to the other is what transforms a simple list into an active information processing system.
And with this new perspective, the individual stones start to look less like items on a grocery list and more like stacked instructions in a computer program. I mean, take position 7 here. It's not just one thing. It's a whole set of layered commands. You've got zirconium for the structure, hafnium acting as a signal or a flag, and then buried deep inside, uranium and thorium kick in to activate what the program calls the heavy burden route. It's a complete instruction set packed into a single stone.
And that burden has to go somewhere. Position 10 from Zilpa's group acts as a perfect mirror image. It's the receiver. It's got beryllium for its scaffold, an active flag of cesium, and even uses the gold mounting as a final assembly condition. So position 7 basically says heavy route is a go, and position 10 answers heavy route accepted. These two stacks bookend the whole decode, and they form a complete, functioning circuit.
So, after all this incredibly dense analysis, where does that leave us? We're heading into the final verdict now, and I think one of the biggest strengths of this whole research program is its intellectual honesty about what it has actually found and what it hasn't.
And now for the final calculation. Using only the internal logic of the breastplate, that shuffle from birth order to maternal order, the program derived two target formulas. And here's the absolute kicker. Both of those formulas pinpoint the exact composition where this bizarre material, UB13, shows its most mysterious and scientifically interesting properties. The ancient text's internal logic points directly to the experimental sweet spot discovered by modern labs. It's a perfect bullseye.
But here's a really critical moment of discipline in the project. For a while, an element called thulium was a big focus of the research, partly because of a phonetic link to a biblical term. But the final, cold, hard analysis makes a brutal cut. Thulium is not chemically present in the stones, so it has to be demoted. And this is proof that the program isn't just chasing cool ideas. It's constrained by the physical object itself.
And this slide right here perfectly captures the project's powerful conclusion. You get two completely distinct outputs. On the left, you've got the internal decode. This is what the ancient object itself seems to be saying. And that points directly to the uranium-thorium axis. That's the historical message, the readout. But on the right, you have the external frontier. That's what our modern computers, inspired by that message, suggest we should try to build next. And their top candidate is a new compound based on that demoted element, thulium. It's a crucial distinction, separating what the object says from what we, today, might be able to do with that knowledge.
So let's be absolutely clear about what this is and what it isn't. The program does not claim to prove that ancient priests knew quantum mechanics. What it can claim is a repeatable, deepening convergence on a very specific family of materials. It can claim a specific internal result that just so happens to align perfectly with modern experimental data. And it can claim to have generated a testable proposal for a brand new material at the frontier of physics. It's a hypothesis generator, not a historical proof. And that, really, is the ultimate takeaway here. The true output isn't a single magical answer from the past. It's a method. It transforms the breastplate from a static, symbolic relic into a dynamic research engine, a machine for generating constrained, testable questions about the future of material science. So we end on this thought. The biblical narrative is so focused on building a temple of stone and gold. But what if this decode is pointing to a completely different kind of temple?
If a structure of carefully ordered materials can encode the frontier of physics, maybe it suggests that the most powerful, the most enduring structures we can ever build aren't physical at all. Maybe they're structures of knowledge, carefully assembled, rigorously tested, and passed down through millennia. Perhaps that is the blueprint that was truly being preserved, not for a building made of stone, but for a temple built from pure understanding.